right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be talking about long division, which we're going to use to turn fractions into decimals, and then we're also going to talk about how to add and subtract decimals. If you would please, on page 12, you may have set this up during class today. If not, please make sure you put the date, September 4th, 2013, the page number, it's page 12, and the title, Long Division, Turning Fractions to Decimals. I gave you during class today a handout that had 4 different pieces of hamburger, and on the back was some writing. And during class, we cut those out and taped them into our notebooks. Tonight, we're actually going to be filling those out, and we're going to use a specific method to remember how to divide fractions. And that method is we're going to use this sentence: Does McDonald's serve burgers? And that's going to kind of give us hints as to what to do for each step. Some of you may remember that during when you were doing everyday math last year, you used something called partial quotient method, and I've seen some of you using that on papers. And that's an excellent method for dividing numbers. It's perfectly fine. Unfortunately, the new Common Core state standards, which I know you've heard me talking about before, they require that you not only can do long division, but that you can do long division using what is called the traditional algorithm. Algorithm is just another word for method. So they want you to be able to do it the traditional way, the old-fashioned way. Partial quotient is a fairly new way of doing things in teaching math. So what I'm going to do now is show you the old way. Does McDonald's serve burgers? In that sentence, every letter stands for something. The D, the M, the S, and the B. The D stands for divide, the M stands for multiply, the S stands for subtract, and the B stands for bring down. So let's go ahead and look at the first flap of our cheeseburger. I want you working with this problem here. 5 divided into 36. It may also be written as 36 divided by 5. Okay? When you get a problem like this, 36 divided by 5, I want you to think about this division symbol down here as a house, okay? This is the door, that's the house. 36 is the first number in the problem, so 36 gets to go in the house, and 5 is the last number in the problem. That number doesn't get to go inside the house at all. It's stuck on the outside. A lot of times people will get mixed up which number goes where. Do not rely on the idea that the biggest number goes inside. That is not always true, as you'll see in just a few minutes when we work through some of our examples. So here we go. We have 36 divided by 5. And on the back of that first flap on your cheeseburger, you should see this sentence: 5 goes into 36 blank times. This is the first step of your long division using the traditional algorithm. It is the divide step. Remember, D stands for divide. And 5 goes into 36 a total of 7 times. 5 goes into 36 7 times. Now, you may have to count up your multiples, you may have to guess and check a couple times, but you want to get as close to 36 as you can without going over. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. It goes 7 times. Make sure that's written on the back of that first flap. Let's go on to the second one. The second step in long division is to multiply. We're going to take that number that we came up with for how many times 5 goes into 36, and we're going to multiply it by 5. So 7 times 5 is 35. You're going to take that 35 and write that just underneath your 36. Okay? And it is, we're going to add a symbol there in just a few minutes. Please make sure that this is written on the back of the second part of the hamburger. Moving on to the third part, we have S. S, in this case, stands for subtract. We are going to subtract 36 by 35 by 36 by 35. I'm losing it. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to put a subtraction symbol here, And I'm going to ask myself, what is 36 minus 35? And hopefully that's easy enough for you. It's a 1. Write that on the back of the third section of your hamburger. This fourth section, guys, the final step, is the one that mixes a lot of people up. They get very, very confused. They say, okay, I have the answer of 7, remainder 1. Yay, I'm done. I'm sorry, but you don't get remainders anymore. You need to take the problem further and find the complete solution. And the way you're going to do that is with the B in your sentence. B stands for bring down. This needs to be written on the back of your final part of the cheeseburger. Bring down. If there is not another number to bring down, you need to add a decimal point. Please write that at this blank. A decimal point and a 0 to bring down. So if we go over here to our problem, we don't have any numbers to bring down, but we certainly haven't finished our problem because we still have a leftover 1 here. So I'm going to add a decimal point and a 0, and I'm going to bring that 0 down. So now I have 10 down at the bottom. I have my decimal point here. I can bring that straight up into my answer. So my answer is going to be 7 point something. That something is what I have to figure out. And in order to figure that out, I start the whole process over again. I keep asking myself, does McDonald's serve burgers? Does McDonald's serve burgers? The D, the first one, is divide. So I'm going to take this 5, my original 5, and ask, okay, does 5 go into 10? Yes, it does, and it goes in twice. That 2 is going to go up here, right above that 0 that you brought down. My second step, McDonald's, multiply. I need to multiply that number I just came up with, that 2, times 5. That gives me 10. I will write it down here. Next step, serve. Serve is subtract 10 minus 10 gives me 0. And then I need to say, okay, is there anything left to bring down? In this case, I don't have any other extra numbers over here that I need to bring down. And I also have a 0 when I did my subtraction. That is the sign that tells me, okay, you're done. If there is nothing left to bring down here, and you end up with a 0 after your subtraction step, you're done. So my answer in this case is 7.2. 36 divided by 5 is 7.2. Okay? Rewind, take a minute to review these notes if you need to. Make sure you have them all written down on the back of your cheeseburger, and then move on, continue with the video. We're going to take a couple minutes now and do some practice questions on here. Go ahead and go to the next page, page 13 in your notebook. Once again, give it a label of the date, September 4th, and the page number, and then put a title on there of long division examples. I'm going to put a problem up on the screen, and then I'm going to ask that you pause the problem, give yourself time to try and figure it out, and if you're stuck, go ahead and hit play and see what my solution was and how I came up with it. Okay? So go ahead and pause your video now. Oh, no, you need the problem. Sorry, guys, I'm a mess today. So let's go ahead and take 44, and we'll divide that by 5. Okay? Now you can pause your computer and see if you can come up with the correct answer. Okay, let's see if you got the right answer. The right answer in this case is 8.8. If you got that right, congratulations. If you did not, look carefully at each step that I did. First, I did division. 5 goes into 44 8 times. Then I multiplied. 8 times 5 is 40. I subtracted. 44 minus 40 is 4. And then I didn't have anything to bring down, so I added a decimal point and a 0 and brought down the 0, leaving me with 40. Then I go back to the beginning, does McDonald's serve cheeseburgers? And I say 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract, and I get 0. That 0 is my signal that I have completed the question. As long as there's nothing else to bring down here, and I end up with 0, I'm a happy camper. All right, let's go ahead and try another problem. You can do this on page 13 as well. Let's make it a little bit more challenging. 462, and let's do that divided by 4. Okay, go ahead and set that up. Try and finish that in your notebooks. Make sure you hit pause and then check back in a minute to see how you did. All right, guys, on this problem, I went ahead and did each step, each time I cycled through divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. I did each time in a different color. So the first time I did divide, multiply, subtract, bring down is in the black. And then I had to do it again in the red. And I had to do it again in the green. And I had to do it again in the blue. I did this because I want you to realize you may have to do this again and again and again and again until you get your final answer. I have a 0 down here at the end, and I don't have any extra numbers to bring down over here, which means I have my answer, 115.5. If you got that wrong, I suggest you go back and replay the first half of the video because we are moving on. All right, if you could please go to page 14, your next page. The date is still September 4th, 2013, and your title is Adding and Subtracting Decimals. Take a minute to write down your objective. I can add and subtract decimals accurately, which means correctly, and quickly without a calculator. I can also solve real-world addition and subtraction problems. Pause and write down that objective if you need to, and make sure by the time you're done with this video tonight, you can do this without a calculator. It's not going to do you any good to use the calculator on your phone because I'm not giving you one on the test. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play, and then we'll move on. All right, on the notes that I gave you today, I also gave you, in addition to the hamburger notes, I gave you some notes on adding and subtracting decimals. And what I need you to do is go to, it should be on the bottom of page 14, and go to your very top paper. We kind of taped them in laying on top of each other. These are the steps to add and subtract decimals. Your first step right here is going to be to line up the decimal points. Okay? Go ahead and add that in. Whoopsie. Your second step is to put in placeholder zeros if necessary, and I'll explain that when we work through the examples. And then step 3 is just to add or subtract. I want you to remember that sometimes in subtraction you have to borrow. So don't be afraid to borrow in subtraction and carry in addition. If you don't remember what those words mean when it comes to subtraction and addition, you might have a little bit of a problem. Pay very close attention to the examples. Step 4, you're just going to slide that decimal point right on down to where it should be in the answer. That's all. The notes are really pretty straightforward for this. Let's get into some examples. Flip that paper up, and you should see a paper underneath that that has these two sample problems on it. 3.61 plus 0.7 and 7.013 minus 5.97. We're going to start with this first one, and I want you to line up these numbers vertically. So take the second number in your problem and slide it right underneath the first, making sure to line up the decimal points. Remember, in our notes, step 1 is line up the decimal points. So I'm going to put the decimal point right there. I have my 0 and I have my 7. Okay? Step number 2 is to put in placeholder zeros if necessary. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put a placeholder 0 in because I don't have any numbers under my 1 and I don't want to get confused. So I'm going to put a 0 in right there. That's all. Sometimes if you want, I like to put a little line, diagonal line, through my placeholder zeros, so I know it's something that I added. You don't have to, it's just something I like to do. Step number 3 was to add or subtract, not forgetting to borrow or carry, depending on what problem you're doing. So let's add. This is an addition problem. Don't get mixed up and do subtraction. And you're just going to add like normal. 1 plus 0 is 1. 6 plus 7, this is where you have to do your carrying. 6 plus 7 is 13. Put the 3 down, carry the 1. And 3 plus 1 plus 0 is 4. Step number 4 is just to bring down the decimal point. So we're going to slide that decimal point all the way down to there. And my answer is 4.31. I suggest you make sure your answer makes sense. I have a number, my first number here is halfway between 3 and 4, okay? And my second number here is almost 1. So if I end up with a number like 431, that is clearly wrong. There's no way you can add about 3.5 plus about 1 and get 431. If you did, you forgot to bring down your decimal point. Same thing if you end up with 0.0431. There's no way you're going to add these two numbers together and end up with a number that is much less than 1. That just doesn't make sense. So make sure that your answers make sense. Do some estimation to see if they're reasonable. Next, let's take this second problem. I'm going to make it a little bigger. This is a subtraction problem. We're going to start out the same way. We're going to take this 5.97, line it up with that decimal, and slide it underneath. So my decimal point is going to go right there. My 5 goes under the 7. My 9 is under my 0. And my 7 is under my 1. That's a 7. Go ahead and put a placeholder 0 in under your 3. Draw the line through it if you wish. And now we have to subtract. Be careful, you have to borrow sometimes when you're doing subtraction. So we go from the far right side, 3 minus 0 is 3. I can do 1 minus 7, but it would give me a negative number, and we're not working with negative numbers. So let's go ahead and borrow. I can't borrow from this 0, because I can't take the 0 down to a negative 1, so I have to borrow from the 7. My 7 is going to become a 6. My 0 is going to borrow that 10 and become 10. But that still doesn't help me fix this problem. So now I borrow from my 10. That's going to go down 1 and become a 9. And my 1 will become an 11. Okay? If you're not familiar with that, rewind it. Look again at what I did. You have to know how to borrow. So now in my hundredths place, I have 11 minus 7. I can do that now without getting a negative number. I'm going to end up with 4. In my tenths place, I have 9 minus 9. That'll give me 0. And in my ones place, 6 minus 5 gives me 1. Step 4 in the notes for subtracting and adding fractions means you slide the decimal point straight down, just like so, and you end up with the answer of 1.043. That's awful close to just plain old 1. If we look at our original problem, we had a number that was very close to 7 minus a number that was very close to 6. It makes sense that we're going to end up with a number right about 1. If we ended up with 104.3, we made a mistake with where we put our decimal point. Okay? Guys, that's really all there is to adding and subtracting fractions. I know you've done this before, it's just a matter of refreshing your memory, and it's a matter of you not relying on the calculator anymore. You have to be able to do these things on your own without a calculator. I want you to try this word problem now. I want you to just kind of try it on your own. See what you can figure it out. I'm not going to give you the answer on this video. So when you come in tomorrow, I want to see in your notebook that you've done the work. Show me that you attempted something. Show me some real work and make sure it's organized and neat and awesome. I will see you in class tomorrow, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.